Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack for Business podcast.
Question for the audience. How can you align your natural talents and financial behaviors so your business grows without the stress of holding you back? That's exactly what you will be talking about in this episode. He'll share how behavioral economics, AI driven insights, and money energy can transform your decision making, strengthen culture, and unlock new levels of growth. If you want to make better decisions, build a people centric business, and future proof your success, listen in and connect with you to take the next step toward your exponential future. Our guest today is Hugh Massey from DNA Behavior International and chairman of the Behavioral Economics Institute. A Titan 100 CEO and recognized pioneer in behavioral economics, Hugh is known for his work in behavioral AI, where he champions the principle that behavior makes money. For over 2 decades, he's helped leaders align natural talents with financial decision making, culture, and performance to build people centric businesses and create what he calls exponential future. Through DNA Behavior's AI-driven B-side tech platform, Hugh's moonshot goal is to positively impact the decision-making relationships of over 1 billion people annually by 2030. He's also the host of Behaviorally Smart Identity Conversations and the author of multiple books on leadership, finance, and entrepreneurship. Hugh, an absolute pleasure having you here today. Welcome. Do you have a favorite quote or saying you'd like to relate to anybody?
Yeah, so thank you, Bernie and Wayne. Great to be with you today. So one of my favorite sayings is dream big, start small, and finish big.
So, your early life, things shape the way you see behavior and money. So it's human behavior, or is it the behavior of money in itself, how money's moved around? What's that all about?
So it's actually both. I think that at the end of the day, behavior and money are completely intertwined. And I did a lot of work on this in my early book, Financial DNA, and then the later work on money energy. But money can be seen as a currency, but money is also behavioral. Money is what you think it is. Your perspectives on money, how you deal with money, and then there is the third limb, which is the energy of money. Money is around us, in us, and sort of in an omnipresent way on a 24/7 basis. We're thinking about, talking about money all day long in some format, even if we don't realize we are. And then when we go to sleep at night, money is being processed in our thought patterns, good and bad. And then we wake up with that, and then we go and do something with those thoughts that have bubbled to the top, whether they're good or bad. So I look at money as completely intertwined in absolutely everything we do through our whole lives, even if we're not conscious of it.
You obviously have done some research and have some education on this, but I want to go farther back. What were the inklings? How do you get to there? What got you started on this process?
Yeah, so what got started me directly started on the process was one day a friend at breakfast asked me, Hugh, you seem to be doing really well in the wealth management business you have. And prior to that, I was a CPA in Australia. So I had a wealth management business, and she asked me, Hugh, what are you really passionate about? And I said, I want to help people all over the world become financially self-empowered. And through reflection over the next year or so, I realized that wasn't teaching people financial literacy in the traditional sense of what is a stock, a bond, how to build portfolios, that type of thing, the more concrete, tangible side of money learning. It was teaching people about themselves. And I had this, awakening that everybody's got a financial personality. And what I had been observing with clients is that when they're under pressure, I would see a different set of behaviors show up. And as opposed to seeing certain other behaviors in a more social setting or even just in an ordinary meeting in an office, I sort of saw more of the learned behaviors, how someone shows up with their education and maybe experiences. But underneath that, we've all got this natural hardwired behavior. And that's what I was shown when I had a meeting with a psychologist. And she said, what you're really talking about is people's natural instinctive behavior. That's what takes over when they're under pressure. So I said, well, I want to know that. And I also was able to connect the dots to the other important piece to all of this is not only understand someone's financial personality and their talents, who they are, how to communicate with them, but I'd always had a goal when I set up the wealth management business of providing personalized experiences that were unique to every person. I didn't know when I first set it up, the business up, how to do that completely other than intuitively. But when I connected the dots, this behavior was really the key element there that needed to be understood. And then you overlay how people deal with money or the financial behavior element. And now we're going down quite a lot deeper.
So, first off, when someone's really upset, they tend to go to their mother tongue. All right. So if you've come to a new country, let's say you spoke Spanish before, if you're really keyed up, you'll start, express yourself in the Spanish language. Is that the same thing? And is it also the same thing you would experience on a on a personal basis or on from the business side? In other words, if I'm working for a corporate, do I also default to that too?
Yeah, it basically, Bernie, is what you're talking about, that you revert to, as you said, your mother tongue, or you just revert to your natural ingrained behaviors that were shaped there from very early in life. And they are really, as far as the brain is concerned, the neural pathways that are built in the brain. You think of it as, in American language, it would be how the Rocky Mountains are shaped in in your head and the flow of the Mississippi River. That's pretty hard to change. That's deep down. And that's what, at the end of the day, you respond to. And this will show up equally in personal situations and in business situations, financial situations, wherever you're in life. So understanding what that is for you is really important. And I think that's the foundation for helping people grow. One, on one side, to maximize their potential, but also on the other side, to minimize the struggles and potential weaknesses that come from it, from not managing it and being aware.
So I can honestly say this is at a whole higher level than anything I've seen. I've taken a lot of courses. So there's training, there's belief setting, there's mindsets, and now you're telling me about DNA? Fill in those blanks for me.
So putting it in the other order, you to develop as a leader, become a highly emotional, intelligent leader to maximize your potential, or whether it's just as a human out there contributing in the world in some way. The starting point is understanding who you are, and who you are, or the core of who you are, is formed from pretty early in life. A lot of it, 85% or so, by the time you're 3 years old. And that is your genetics that come at conception, plus the early life experiences that you have from conception, which is probably 80% of that formation up to the age of 3, because at 3, a lot of the neural pathways in the brain are formed. And so if you understand that, then you can implement training, coaching that's tailor made to you. You can build decision making frameworks that's tailor made to you. You can figure out why you connect with certain people and not others, what your values are. All starts coming from that. But that's not the only thing you've got to learn. It's still got to, let's not underestimate that life experiences that happen from 3 years old onwards, going to school, getting your first checking account, maybe something happens in the family home, you have a good experience with something. All of every event and every decision you make in some way is shaping you. But the more hardwired parts coming from whatever happens between conception and 3 years old.
So, nature and nurture are they both telling you? Because if you do biology, right, genetically you can be predisposed to certain types of behaviors.
Yeah.
They may not be coming up unless, of course, either extreme stress or opportunity strikes. Pro and con, right? You see that, you hear that about addiction sometimes. You might have a predisposition that way. Is it the same with handling numbers and then understanding that numbers ebb and flow, almost like understanding life in general? Cold, hot, so forth.
Yeah, I think so. The nature and nurture argument is very big, and I think you've Bernie used a key word in all of this: stress, and stress brings out more of the natural instinctive behaviors, because when people are in stress zone, their cognitive abilities are not as high, their emotions are all over the place, and they're not going to think. They just revert back to what is easy for them, what the go-to response is, And so that's important. And stress also gets caused though from people living out of alignment with who they are for a long periods of time, not working in the right roles, not in the right place in the community, not in the right relationships, things not flowing well for them. That all causes stress. So that's a multifaceted discussion, uh, in its own right.
So I feel like there was some dots that I missed. I understand training, I understand DNA, I understand even I'd love to know more about how that works. And then you brought in artificial intelligence. Now I can truly say I'm genuinely lost. Fill me in.
Okay, so let's take it that the starting point is understanding your DNA, but also the learned behaviors or the life experiences that come thereafter. So understanding that package that leads into becoming more conscious as a human being. You can be trained. Skills are something that can be learned as opposed to inbuilt. So that's an important part. Coaching and development. Now, in terms of uh, in terms of AI in the human behavioral area that we work in, the normal pathway for someone to understand their DNA behavior, so their style, their financial behavior, their talents, has been for people to complete a behavioral assessment and take 10 minutes, 12 minutes online. And then you get back the feedback from all the algorithms and sort of scientific work we've done over 24 years in building a system to report back. Now with AI, and normally that's then needed a facilitator to explain it to you. Now with AI, we can actually undertake what's called a digital scan of a person. Like I could go into our system and do it for you two and provide you that reporting and feedback. So we know from algorithms how you are likely to respond to the questionnaire without you having to complete it. And so we can go to public data sources. And that's one level of the AI that we've built. So that's now enabling us to work with people on a mass scale basis, far more than a one-on-one basis. The second part to the AI is that we're able to build systems inside our technology, guidance inside our technology to actually facilitate the profile feedback for you rather than having to have a facilitator. And then there's, like a large language model sitting there that can answer any questions that you might want to ask. I could say, I want to meet with Max tomorrow, and Max's style is X, and these are the attributes. It's going to prepare for me a tailor-made meeting plan. That's what AI can do in the field that I'm in.
Actually, you actually answered the question I need to now ask. What is the field you're in, Hugh? Without being facetious, I'm not.
So I'm in the field of behavioral science. In particular, there's a specialty there, if you want to call it a sub area of behavioral science known as behavioral economics. And behavioral economics is about the psychology of money. And it's recognizing that in the initial level, it's recognizing that human beings aren't rational. In a way, we could say that human beings are normal because no human being is rational. So in actual fact, it's normal to have biases. And that's largely what the field of behavioral economics has sought to understand. And then how does that, those insights influence how people make decisions and take action. But money is the key part in all of that. As opposed to the field of behavioral science is a little more broad than that and may not in all ways be addressing money as such, because you know how someone turns on a computer screen and what do they go and look at when they're buying something on a website may not entirely be behavioral economics, although I would argue it is. I think that the gap's narrowing because money is in everything. But there's behavioral health, for example, and how do people respond to a healthcare initiative? How do they want to be engaged with? That's another whole area of human behavior. I don't go down that path as much as I do everything. I'm more touching everything that's behavior and money in some way, directly or indirectly.
There used to be a book, uh, used to be still there, called Freakonomics. And the idea was certain things happened and there were outcomes. Now, the choices were made, and they're talking about not repercussions because that sounds like there's an adverse, but there are things that happen, unexpected results. Does this then take into account, I'm going to make a decision and I have a decision tree and I'm going to use my emotions in there. But does it take into account the overall flow of everything from, from the time the a product is created to the product is back recycled back into the system, whether it's landfill or getting in the green bin? Does it take that all into perspective too, or is it just the person's transactions itself?
Yeah, so when we do our normal profile where someone has to complete it, to complete the assessment, people are choosing. There's 46 questions. It takes 10 minutes, believe it or not, because all we're doing is getting people to choose between three words like aspiring, detailed, and patient. Which one of those three are you most like? And which one are you least like? And you leave the other one out. So for me, the most like is aspiring, the least like's patient. Okay. I've got to be honest about that. And you get those choices, and we know from psychometrics what that's going to say about the person and how they act, decide, interact, relate, etc. So that's the first part. Now, when we and so and in the process we're trying to remove situational biases, etc. We don't ask any financial question or any demographic question in doing that. When we deploy the digital scan, what we're doing is, so long as we know your name, Wayne Pratt, Bernie Fransgrove, right? We know your name and where you work or have worked, and we've got an identifier on you. We can go and assimilate a whole lot of information that provides a predictor on how you would answer those most and least like questions. But it's not a heavy reliance on how much money you have. That's irrelevant to who a person is at the core, or it's not very much the demographics. Now, we have a little demographic spin in there that we know women tend to take risks differently to men. There might be different tones, but we're looking behind quite a lot of that as well. So I don't need to know too much demographically or financially about a person to get a read on who they are and a prediction on how they're going to behave.
Are there archetypes that you have identified over time? Like, you have introvert, extrovert, that's
Yeah,
kind of
so our assessment measures 8 primary factors of behavior. So the big 5, which is very well known, measures 5. We measure 8, and then we measure also 24 sub-factors. So you're now getting into 32 behavioral areas is what we measure. And then what we do is take the numbers from that statistically and combine those into what I call 10 overall styles. So for example, I'm an initiator. I'm a person that likes to take action, pioneering in terms of goal setting, competitive, take risks, and quite fast paced. That's me and my makeup as an initiator. Most initiators will, or all initiators will generally operate the same, but not be exactly the same because no two humans are the same. But that's a way of understanding people. And then my opposite, for example, might be someone that we call a relationship builder, and their life is about building relationships, working in groups, cooperating with others. They don't take a lot of risk, usually fairly friendly teddy bears in that sense. And then, you've got the people that are more the engineer that want to know every detail under the sun, others that are creatives. So you get that mixture.
Is money mythos something that we believe may have been true once or was only true for a subset of people and we were told it was everybody? What are the money myths that are still driving us that shouldn't be?
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe the money, the money myths are probably are different for all of us. I certainly think that people in today's age need to have a higher degree of financial flexibility than we would have once had because the world is changing so much. Cost structures are changing. You can't predict when you retire. Let's say you decide to retire at 65 years old. You can't predict today what your healthcare costs would be. So just taking 4% income a year out of a portfolio, that might be a myth. I think another myth is that financial planning, for example, is built heavily on risk profiles and not enough on a person's savings. That to me is a myth. So the propensity to save money is perhaps far more important than risk. Because if you haven't saved any money, you've got nothing to invest. So the risk profile becomes academic, or you've got to take so much risk uh, to get to the place that you would to get to the goal or the retirement place that you want to be in. I think that retirement at 65 in today's world is a misnomer because we're all going to live a lot longer. So what do we need to do? We need to do something in retirement. I don't think that you can only deal with money alone when you're talking about making financial decisions. You've got to look at the overall quality of life the person wants to have and all dimensions of their life, their values. That's all got to be addressed in synchronization with money. Another myth would be, I think, that how do you make money? You know, the most money is generally for most people, other than the 1% or the quarter of 1% that are excellent at funds management. Money is made from your talents, from the use of your talents, and the relationships that you build is what makes money, creates fundamental wealth, not investing. Investing is about looking after it. So they would be some big ones. I think the other one is that as humans, we're all different. And this is where I get to with the personalization. So like, even if we talk about in behavioral economics, there's a bias called loss aversion. It's a big one. But, you know, we're all loss averse to different degrees. And you can't say that everybody is going to value, you know, losses versus the opportunity to make a gain on a 2-to-1 ratio, as is the theory or the research that Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize. That's not denigrating his research, because what he did was seminal. And I think he would also, if he was alive today, admit that 2-to-1 ratio is different for each person. For some, it's going to be 5 times. They've got to perceive the opportunity to make 5 times the gain before they're going to take a risk. Others, it's perhaps 1.5. And so I think that, you know, that if that helps you with some of the myths that I see about money, and I think the myth is what is money itself, which goes back to what I said at the start. Money is not just a currency. Money is what you believe money to be, and money is an energy force. And so therefore, it's all shaped around you. If you want to live, and we haven't quite got there yet in this conversation, but you want to live an exponential life, then what role's money going to play? Money can become the biggest self-limiting barrier to doing anything in the world.
So what is an exponential future? What, since we've touched on it, we haven't touched on it, but you've brought it up. Eh,
Brought it up because I can read I can read your mind. I know that you're going to bring it up, just to put a little humor in there. But no, I think that I look at the world of, you know, I started off with the phrase dream big, start small, and finish big. I think a mistake for a lot of people out there is they don't think big enough about their goals. We all can do way more than we think we can. I was taught some years ago, you could do 50% more than you think you can do. Yeah, I think that's for a year. I think then the next year it becomes that again. But I think it's even bigger than that. And if we think about it, if we all can, as humans, think about how we can live beyond ourselves, that we are all capable of creating something that is way bigger than us, and importantly, has enormous human impact. And so and it's going along with exponential future is abundance, is that I think we are all capable of creating more for humanity than we think we can. And so in defining goals, I encourage people to think of their goals in terms of their impact on humanity, or social impact as well included in that. That's not saying the money part's irrelevant, but if you get the human impact goal right, how many people can I impact with my business if I get it going in the right direction and give it some time? The financial part will follow. If you want to make $1 billion, you should be thinking about, how do I impact 1 billion people? And I think that's the world we're in. AI allows that to happen. Data allows that to happen. And not just AI, but every technology. I suppose they're all got an AI component in some ways. But if you think like that, and you build the right financial structure behind you, business models, right mindset, right people, you can do that. And so I think that's the part with the exponential future is, if we just think about life as linear, okay, I'm making $1 million today, and then my growth path is, well, how do I double that to 2, and then maybe double it again? That's linear, even though they're good growth numbers. But why can't there be a year in there where you go, say, from 2 million to suddenly to 10 million, because you've got a whole cluster of ingredients right, and suddenly you get the breakthrough moment? That can happen. And that happens to businesses. You know, just look at some of the bigger businesses out there. They didn't grow just like that. They grew big time hockey stick, if not bigger than the hockey stick, in terms of sort of growth trajectory. but it's a mindset I think you got to have if you want to do it.
I think as a Canadian, we don't get the credit for that hockey stick they mentioned about in finance.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Something you did mention, Hugh, that I can cue in on. You mentioned that money is actually just a form of energy. And then there's words like manifestation. And you
Yeah.
have people like Bob Proctor and Mary Morrissey. And you have books like The Secret. Why is that only understood by 5% of the people? Why is that not breaking through, if you were guessing?
And I think, Wayne, luckily that there's other people nowadays talking about some of those concepts. I think that for a lot of people don't take the time in a way to speed up, you've got to slow down. So that's something that's important. You've got to take some time to get in a space where you can become fully conscious of who you are. And I think that you've also got to, this is probably the leap of faith a little bit. You've got to subscribe to that if I can dream it, I can make it happen. Your thoughts are going to be what comes. Now, you may not be able to predict the timing, but we all create our own existence. And I think if you sit there and you wallow in negativity, that's what you're going to create. If you don't want something to work out, that's coming from your mindset. So you engineer it, whether it's subconsciously, for it not to work out. But you can also engineer things and have positive thoughts and expand your mindset that allow more things to come in. You can then get yourself educated. I think that some of The Secret was probably seen as, in some ways, maybe not credible in all of how it was presented, although I think a lot of the ideas are very good. But there's more players out there that these days can take you through more of a guided process to get there, but you have to have that leap of faith that it can happen. And, it's sort of gets to Bruce Lipton's biology of belief. You don't have to be stuck in your own genes. You can turn on the epigenome that lives above the genes and turn on and off what you want to turn off. But for some people, that's not scientific enough. There's not enough proof. But I come from the school of thought that if you want something to happen, you can make it happen. It might take time. It might take building relationships. It's getting your purpose right. It's getting skilled up enough, feeling confident. But you put all those pieces together, it can happen.
So you've talked about you, the person. But let's say you're in the corporate landscape. Are you talking about the CFO and then the people managing their budgets all the way down? And if you're talking the CFO, is that now the gestalt of all the people together? Does it become one attribute or does it become a mix? And like if you add a little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar to a recipe, right? It influences the flavoring, or a little bit of cinnamon, right? It changes the profile. Is what we're talking about just the individual, or is it the community if you're in a corporate structure?
Yeah, so if you're in a corporate structure, I'd go one step higher than the CFO. In my mind, it all starts with the CEO. And if you're going to transform the thinking of the organization, the culture of the organization, it starts with him or her. And that's where and if there's going to be exponential thinking, taking steps to transform the business, there's got to be buy-in at that level. Typically an accountant or a CFO, most of them are going to be thinking about the numbers which reflect the past. You've got to do something that's going to reflect the future. And so there, in fact, may in some organizations, and I would encourage more organizations, if not every organization, having someone that's in innovation, that's not tied to all the past numbers, to help be part of this process, whether it's creating new markets, new products, new ways in which things are done. But there's got to be that kind of can-do mindset coming from the top. You've got to have psychological safety in the organization to allow different thinking to flourish and not just the old ways. So that, there's a lot of pieces to this. So the organization gets shaped from the people, and particularly the leaders that are influencing the decision making in the organization. They're the ones that need to be dealing with this, held account for dealing with this, conversed with, coached, and helped. All of those things. So in a way, the organization is a reflection of the individuals. If you get a change in the C-suite of an organization, that will change what's going on. Or if you've got a heavy-handed board, if that changes, that will change what goes on down through the business. And just, I said this to a business leader this morning at a meeting, you know, to go and watch the movie on Netflix about Boeing and see how Boeing is a mess today. And it comes from the changed leadership, which then took out the safety first culture of Boeing. You now got airplanes falling out of the sky, and a lot of it is around, mafia style management tactics, lack of psychological safety, people not confronting, being allowed to confront issues that needed to be confronted regulatory wise. All of that's going on there. Or you go to watch a movie, there's a movie, it's got the title Titan in it about the submarine that is on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean trying to, get to the Titanic. If you look at that business story for a founder being, an autocratic founder that shut down all thinking, ran out of the business, all the good people, look what happens. And they're not isolated cases. This happens all the time. So it is a reflection of the people because an organization is just a myriad of the people and a reflection of the decisions that get made, some of which happen years before and it takes a while to flow through.
You mentioned having someone come alongside, and assuming this resonates, and I know for me, I never even opened the box before on some of this. But if you see, I want more information. Is there a consulting process? Is there a podcast? Is there an info structure? How did we get a hold of you? And who do you want to work with?
Yeah, so to get hold of me and to sort of see more inside the what's involved here, you can go to our website at dnabehavior.com. There's plenty of videos there that sort of talk about the behavioral data analytics, behavioral science technology that we have. There's then our business optimization services, how we help with organizational culture, all the things I've talked about today are there in the website. And I would say that Wayne and Bernie, this starts with, if I step in, this is starting in coming in with a conversation with the CEO, to talk about, okay, building a set of goals in a future that's way bigger than what you can thinking of right now. Get out, get away from even put aside your current business model for now and start thinking beyond that. But also how are you as a leader going to show up? What's your identity for leading the team and how are you going to breed a culture of psychological safety? So that's going to be the Hugh pep talk side of it. And then what I'm going to do with the leader is say, okay, let's get a psychometric based analysis of every employee that you have at all levels and every client customer. And let's figure out where do we need to start the change in your organization from to get to the new place. One, we might fix some current problems, but then how are we going to move to the new world that you want to get to? That's what we're going to do. So we're going to heat map your whole organization to start with.
Do you have a particular type of organization that would need this type of attention to detail? Assuming everybody needs the attention, but is there a particular industry, a particular
No,
vertical?
so half our clients are in in the broader financial services space. So if you take wealth management, banks, insurance companies, securities firms, so they all need it because they're and I think one because the client relationship is so close to what they do in those organizations, and they're seeking to build intimate relationships with their clients. And so understanding how your client behaves is your opportunity, but it's also where value can get created. But it is also where the risk is. And so, at the end of the day, if you want to be an organization that maximizes value, you need to put a tailor-made suit on every client. And these organizations are seeking to build, long-lasting relationships with clients. It's not just buy one product and move on. It's complex, it's deep relationships. So they're going to be a lot of the ideal clients, but there are other organizations in other market channels that have all of those characteristics as well. Anywhere where there needs to be personalization, we're a fit.
Perfect. Hugh, I want to say thank you so much for sharing these insights. It's outstanding, and Wayne, thank you for being the co-host. You have the knack for business listeners. If this is like, hang on, I need to understand, my management style of money, which reflects either myself or my business. reach out to you. He can help you align your natural talents with your financial behavior. Because the key is reduce your stress and unlock growth and stronger decision making skill sets. That's always important. It keeps your business going and you have healthy and happy.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.